Hey everyone, I hope you are having a wonderful day so far. I am just dropping this special little clip into all the episodes. So, no matter what episode you're listening to, this is actually pretty current as of July 2024. I wanted to come on here and just say a big thank you to Earworthy because the Life Shift podcast was just named the best overall podcast of the year in the first Earworthy Independent Podcast Awards. And you've probably seen some articles written about the Life Shift podcast before, written by Earworthy. And now he is launching from his online publication, he is launching these yearly winners of independent podcast awards. And these are specifically for indie podcasters. We are those that wear all the hats. We create the show. Some people write the show. We're producers, sound engineers. We troubleshoot all the tech. We do any kind of research if we need to. We host the shows. We distribute the shows. We do all the things that relate to our shows because we love it. And it's so nice to see my name in a list with some other amazing podcasts like Multispective, which won Best Life Lessons Podcast. Salad with a Side of Fries won Best Health Podcast. Bippity Boppity Business won Best Business Advice Podcast. And there are so many more. And so I just want to come on here and say thank you to Earworthy for not only doing these awards every year and just honoring some of us indie podcasters that sometimes feel like we're just shouting into the void, but we're not. We're just doing what brings us joy, and hopefully through that work it brings other people joy. In my case, for the Life Shift, I hope that each episode finds the ears that needed to hear it the most so that they feel a little less alone in their circumstance. But also, Earworthy writes all these amazing publications pretty much weekly, every week, every weekday, I should say, where he writes on Blogger, Medium, Substack, Tumblr, Vocal, Many Stories, and for other places. And he really just highlights the independent podcasters. So thank you, Frank, for everything you do with Earworthy and for recognizing all of us in the first Earworthy Independent Podcast Awards. If you'd like to read more, please head to medium.com/EAR hyphen WORTHY. Thanks again and enjoy this episode.
I felt like no one listened to what I was actually saying. And in some cases, kind of reminiscent of the story of like having an indoor picnic and thinking everyone did. I also just thought the experiences in my head and the way that I viewed the world was exactly the same as everybody else. And the problem is that I worked in a corporate environment. And so just people didn't get my creative brain and just trying to like make it through the day.
I'm excited to share this week's episode with you, where I had the pleasure of chatting with Heather Taylor. She's a talented writer, director, and podcaster with a unique perspective on life. During our conversation, we talked about the challenges that she's faced with ADHD and how that's affected her career. Heather's story is a great reminder of the importance of embracing neurodiversity and how we can all learn from each other's unique experiences. We discussed the impact of societal norms on individuals with different abilities and the pressure to conform. One thing that stood out to me was Heather's journey to accepting her unique abilities and learning to ignore the stigmas and misconceptions surrounding ADHD. It was great to hear her insights on how to cope with internalized shame and the process of masking. Before we get into the episode, I want to thank my Patreon members for supporting this episode. If you want to join our community and get involved in the t-shirt giveaway, check out thelifeshiftpodcast.com/join for more information on all the different tiers offered. So I hope you enjoy listening to Heather's inspiring story as much as I did. It was an honor to have her as a guest on the Life Shift podcast. Here's our conversation. I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift. Candid conversations about the pivotal moments that have changed lives forever. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Life Shift podcast. I am here with Heather Taylor. Hey, Heather.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me on.
Well, thank you for being a part of this. And recently I posted on social media how intimidating it is to be recording with another podcaster. I don't know if you feel the same way.
I feel intimidated and I'm the guest, so.
It's just like such a weird process. In fact, I was on a podcast in April of 2023, and I listened back and I sounded out of breath the entire time, and I was like, was I running on a treadmill? What was happening here? So feel free to get comfortable.
Yes, I'm gonna just shake it out a little.
Just shake it out. Yeah, and so you're a writer and you're a director and you're a podcaster, and I'm assuming you use a lot of your own personal experiences in your writing to kind of do what I think I'm trying to do with the Life Shift podcast, is to help people relate to other stories and feel less alone in those experiences, and kind of build that community of humans,
Yeah.
and that we're a lot more alike than we are different.
Yes. And I think too, as someone who creates things, like when I first started to realize I wanted to be a creator, it was because I told a very deeply personal story of mine in combination with another person. I did a collective creation project, and one of our tech people amazingly let me use their story, and we created a story together, and I would perform it every night. And I'd have people come up to me afterwards and say, I thought I was alone. I never knew anyone else experienced this. And to me, like, I remember crying and being like, this is why I do this. But it took me still a few more years to realize it's the story that I needed to focus on, and not necessarily the telling of it. I just, as the conduit, it's just more that it's getting those words on paper and allowing people to read and experience something, or experience something through theater or film or television, that made them feel that they were seen in a way that they've never seen before. And I think as we see film and television continue to grow and change and see more perspectives, it makes it really exciting, because I feel like we're going to be able to reach more people and allow other people who never could experience something that someone experienced to create empathy for that as well.
I agree. I think that media is getting a little bit more multifaceted and sharing different stories and not shying away as much. I have that same feeling of when you described someone coming up to you after. Was that like when one person came up to you? Did you feel like that was a win? Like the whole thing was worth it because that one person came up to you and was like, thank you for sharing this story?
I think at that point in time, I didn't even think anyone else experienced it. I still was like, even in my, it was that slow realization that as I'd share even my own personal stories, and kind of people would be surprised, like, oh, I didn't, like, I would talk about having indoor picnics. My mom has agoraphobia, and so she would make our life as joyful as possible. So we would have indoor picnics. I thought everyone had indoor picnics. So I was like, oh, we could, when you had indoor picnics. And someone said to me, what's that? And I realized that no one in the room that I was in telling stories had ever experienced the same thing I'd experienced. And so it just actually created, for me, I just felt a little more alone, and like, do I share these stories? And then when someone came up to me and talked, because I told a story about being a kid who was overweight and having, people in my life take limit my food because, for me to become something I wasn't, like, I wasn't the ideal. So therefore you must be changed. And so by telling that story and having people come up to me and say, I've experienced that, then I'm like, oh, maybe there are more likenesses than differences. And so I think to me, that was the first time that I really realized in that whole experience that my experiences are very different than other people's, but also there are people in the world who have experienced the same thing I have as well.
Yeah, I never thought of that in the sense of like, do I jump into sharing this even though every time I share it so far, no one can relate to? I think there's a piece of that there are probably threads within those stories that, although not the same experience, kind of like what you're going to share today, is that there are threads in that, in the way we feel, the way we react, the way someone else reacts to us, that we can relate to. And so maybe not having an indoor picnic, but maybe understanding the situation and relating to it. And so, I just thank you for what you're about to share, even though I really don't know, because as most of my listeners understand, I really only ask a simple short question. And I do that because I want the story to be shared with me for the first time so that we can have an actual conversation about it. And I don't have pre planned questions for you. So I'm excited about this. And I think it would be wonderful if you could kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, but also after you do that, paint the picture of what your life was like leading up to this pivotal moment that we're going to discuss today.
I am a writer and director, as you said, and I, work across different mediums, but that wasn't always the case. I had to work day jobs, A, to survive, and B, because I kept immigrating to different countries. Because when I had an opportunity to say yes, I'd always say yes. It's not always the right timing, but I would still do it, which will come into play, I think, why that happened a lot in a moment. But I had immigrated to England and gotten my citizenship, and then I had the opportunity to immigrate to America. So in America, I thought I'm going to be able to easily get a green card. It's going to be really quick. It's not a quick process. Immigration takes a long time. It took me 6 years. And as I did that, I was trying to be a writer and a filmmaker on the side. And then in the days, I was working really taxing jobs. I was an editorial director for a publication, and then I moved into the space of advertising as working in New York in some of the biggest advertising agencies in the world, and working and struggling, working 11, 12-hour days, 7 days a week, no boundaries, no ability to do any of the things that I loved. And I got to the point where I thought maybe I just am not good at it. And maybe that I'm just good at this thing that's making me extremely unhappy. And the whole time I was struggling, and I got to a point where I was traveling and I'm like, I have to talk to someone. I have to talk to a therapist. But whenever I talked to them and I would give my perspective, I always felt like they didn't get what I was explaining or what I was trying to talk about. I'm a teary person, so I'm going to tear up on this stuff. So I would try to explain my perspective. Like, sometimes the world is too loud, or sometimes things get overwhelming, and they're like, "Oh, you just have anxiety." Like, I don't have anxiety. I'm not anxious. I'm not an anxious person. I'm like, I don't have anxiety. I know what anxiety is. I know how it presents because my mom has panic disorder and agoraphobia. My sister has anxiety. Like, I have other family members with anxiety. I know what anxiety is, and I don't have it. But I always felt that I was put into a very specific box for my whole life. Anytime that I had trouble and I would go to see a therapist, they would say, "This is how your family is, so that's how you are." And I felt like no one listened to what I was actually saying. And in some cases, kind of reminiscent of the story of like having an indoor picnic and thinking everyone did. I also just thought the experiences in my head and the way that I viewed the world was exactly the same as everybody else. And the problem is that I worked in a corporate environment. And so just people didn't get my creative brain and just trying to like make it through the day. And I remember so many times in this kind of corporate world, and I would switch jobs. Like, I would be so terribly bored and I would try my best and I would be struggling. And I'm like, well, if I just switch jobs, things will get better. So I'd switch jobs and it'd be good for a while. And then the same thing would happen. I'm like, this is boring. And my brain isn't activated and I don't know how, I'm just dragging myself through the day. I'm trying my best, but I don't understand. Like, I'm super smart. I get it. Why can't I just like focus on this? And I remember being told, or from a friend, he's like, yeah, my friend said I shouldn't hire you because you never stick around. And so I'm like, well, I don't want to seem unreliable. I'm a reliable person, but why am I struggling so much? And I started to think like maybe there's something more going on. And I started to think about the idea of maybe something like ADHD, which I had heard about through other people. I didn't do deep dives because I was scared of putting something on myself. And I will now, like reflecting back, think I 100% had internalized ableism, this idea that I can't be smart and capable if I have a disability. Totally false. That's not true. But in my mind, I'm like, well, it can't be it because I'm an intelligent person. I got straight A's. I did really good at school until I didn't do good at school. And I erased those parts. I just was like, but I'm smart and I do good at school and everything. And I remember having a osteopath that I went to that I loved. And I talked to him about ADHD and he said, I've been diagnosed. It's life-changing. Like there's medication you can take. It can be really life-changing. It can change everything. And then he did something that no doctor should do. And he brought me some of his medication and said, here, you should try it, which then terrified me. And I took it home and I threw it away. And I was like, I'm going to close that door. I don't have this. I'm going to walk away from this thought.
What time period was this, by the way? What year?
This would have been now probably, so 8 years ago. So 9 years ago.
2015 or so?
Yeah, around that.
2015. Okay.
So I'd already been questioning. And then I got to a point where someone said, you probably do. Try this thing that was highly illegal to do. And I got scared and I was like, okay, I'm going to shut that door. I'm done. But I kept struggling. And no matter what, and I went to therapy every week. And I remember, being late, all the things. And I kept trying and I'm like, I don't know why I can't be on time. I don't understand. I put all these things in place to help myself. I would get criticism at work about, I've had things like, sometimes you interrupt, and sometimes especially when I get excited about things, or you don't show the work as I kind of think a lot about you just go from A to D. And because you're working with sales, this is what I was told, because you're working with salespeople, you have to show them how you go from A to B or A to D, because they won't get it, which is what kept reinforcing the idea that, well, if I was in a room with creative people, they would totally get the way that I think. So I'd have to force myself into these boxes, and I would ask for accommodations without understanding why I needed them. Can I sit in that? There's a corner desk. Can I sit in that corner desk where I'm not distracted by people? And I was told, but you're extroverted, so this introverted person needs it more than you. And it was for me, it was yeah, but people come to my desk and they bother me, and it's too loud and too much. And I need to be in a corner. And I remember the light going out above me and being so excited, because bright lights really irritate me and I don't work as well. So, or I'd go, when I had to really concentrate, I'd go into one of the offices, not offices, conference rooms that had dimmable lights, and I would dim the lights as low as I could. And I'd listen to chill music, and I'd work in the semi-dark. And people would come by and do you need the lights on? And I'm like, no, this is perfect. This is perfect. But not understanding that this is probably not usual for people in my work environment to do. But for me, it was the way that it could exist in an okay way, but continuing to struggle, being on the streets of New York, loud, busy, chaotic, wearing headphones with no music, so I could hear the environment but not be overwhelmed by it. And there's all these things that were very clear. And it's not that this is only happening as an adult. This is literally a disorder that happens when you're born with it. And so there's been all things throughout my life. But at that time, I didn't know that. I felt I'm struggling now. I must be doing something wrong. I kept putting on myself, what am I doing wrong? How do I fix this? And then I finally, probably it would have been 3 years ago, I just went enough. I can't do this anymore.
Right. It sounds exhausting.
It's so exhausting. I'm so tired.
It's interesting because you mentioned throughout your life, people have been kind of labeling you or putting you in certain boxes. You're an extrovert, whether they talk to you about that or not and understand or listen. But also there's the other side of you that's running away from a label that you could be.
Yes.
And so there's another battle that's happening as a human. And I think so many of us can relate to society, whoever in society telling us how we need to be and how we need to perform. And then us putting that responsibility on ourselves, or I can't be this way because so and so that I don't even know over here says that someone that's labeled that is not this, and
Yes.
I'm this, and nothing's really fitting. So I can imagine that in addition to all the experiences that you were having and trying to accommodate for yourself, you also have this like internal battle of what a label is and whether or not a label really means anything, right? And I can see you running from one, but running towards one, and it sounds like that is. I mean, I think it's very relatable. I think we all,
Yeah.
growing up in this same time period, kind of assumed a lot of things from society that
Yes.
maybe weren't true or serving us well.
Well, I think too, I also kind of grown up in a family where, for good or bad, my mom was very much like, I don't want any of you to have any labels because I don't want you to have less opportunity. And like we'd grown up in a town where we went from, when my parents got divorced, we went from middle class to poverty. And so we got ostracized by our community. And so I understood labels very acutely. And I understood the power of labels and how they hurt you. And so I never talked about my mom my mom struggles. That's private. Like everything that made us actually who we are or what we could be was private. So everything was kind of my little brother. We always grew up thinking that he probably was autistic, but my mom again didn't want labels on him. And she said she did take him to someone and they're like, it's anxiety again, because a parent with anxiety, they always assume a child has anxiety. Anxiety can be part of like this kind of neurodevelopmental disorders. It can be. Because of my diagnosis, my brother got to be diagnosed. He has ADHD as well, and he got to be medicated for the first time, and he said it's life changing. Sorry.
No, you're
Yeah.
fine. I think it's interesting going back to the point about labels is that your mom put that, I don't want to say it's pressure, but put that feeling that a label is, one way or another. Do you feel because of that much of your life, and it kind of sounds like it in the corporate world, that much of your life was a performative version of yourself to kind of play the game as well as you could so that no one would label you?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the hugest problem with something like ADHD and autism. A lot of things. It's the masking, especially in women. So I masked. Oh, I remember someone said, "You're such a chameleon," and I was like, "That was such an interesting phrase." And I think about that a lot. And I thought, actually, I was a chameleon my whole life, and even now, it's like, what is the dress code? Who's going to be there? What do I have to say? What's the script? Like, what's the thing that makes me just fit in? When I would, sometimes your brain wanders, you don't, not purposely, it gets a stimulus and it chases it. And so I would miss the starts of conversations all the time. And I would just go, oh, that's nice, or whatever. I would pretend I heard everything. Like there, but it's all forms of masking. It's not saying like I'm having trouble right now, or it's a lot of it's internal shame. So by not having that, in that masking and that, like, I don't want to be different because I feel different. I feel like I don't really understand the world. I wish someone would explain it to me. Like I really still to this day, I'm like, how does this work? Am I doing it right? And
The answer is yes. You're being a human and
yes.
you're living your life.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there was this internalized shame that you carry for not being able to like function in the square box you're trying to put your round self in, because that's not the right, I shouldn't be putting myself into that box. But that's what I kept doing, is like, if I just wear the right clothes, if I go to a punk show, I wear different clothes and different makeup. I even changed my nose ring. Like I would do that. I would look different because I thought if I looked different, I'd feel different.
I mean, I would venture to say that a lot of people, whether there's a diagnosis attached to it or not, I think we were trained to fit in. Don't ruffle feathers. Don't, and this is just a product of our parents and then a product of their, it's just
Oh, of
kind of this
course.
passing down. But, so I want to bring you back to where you were in your story, where it sounds like about 3 years ago, you went to get some more information.
And yeah, I'm gonna take. I realize I'll take it back because of time. I don't even know. It's like, oh yeah, the dates passed. It was 2018. I got accepted into a program to do this. It's called the Canadian Film Center, and it was the primetime TV program. I finally was like, I got my green card, so I got my green card, which was an amazing day. And then I got into this program, which allowed me to leave my job, go to this program. I didn't tell the job I was leaving. I asked them to if this is fine. It's enough years have gone by, but I asked to be made redundant so I could take severance. But I knew I was going somewhere because I was
Good
like,
for
I need
you.
to figure this out. I'm not made of money. Like, so I did this program and I was suddenly around other creative people like me. And I thought, finally, I'm going to fit in to this place. And I still didn't feel like I fit in. I mean, I'm close with a lot of the people in the program. It's not that I wasn't accepted and welcomed. It was just, I'm like, oh, I'm still struggling with certain things. I remember my showrunner very nicely gave me feedback. Heather, don't answer questions that other people ask me, even though if you know the answer. And I realized I wasn't doing it purposely. It just would come out of my mouth. And I was like, oh, okay, sorry. And I'm like, oh no, I did something wrong again. And it wasn't something I did on purpose. And then a couple other things, or like it's the kind of interrupting or the like, because I was getting excited about things. Again, I'd still have to explain things, be very linear and very simple. Even when I started working in like other rooms, realizing that, oh, you don't, if I tell you like that this change makes all of these changes, you won't understand it because you don't see the giant web of information that I'm seeing in my brain right now. And so as I started to realize that it wasn't the job that was doing this, there's something with me that I have to figure out. Then I started to realize, I think this is what's going on. I did all the research. I'm a lover of research. I've always have been. I was a kid who read encyclopedias. I still do. This is a real thing. And I love it. I love new things. I'm like a 6-year-old. I love dinosaurs and space and science. That's it. So I did all the research and I looked at anything that showed me like, here are the symptoms. And I like, it was all of them. It was everything. But I was like, oh, there's an answer. And so I went super prepared to talk to a therapist. I found an ADHD specialist. I found someone who was younger deliberately because I know that there's a stigma. I know there's a stigma against later in life diagnosis. So I was being very mindful of who I spoke with. And it was absolutely brilliant because I was able to have an answer of sorts and to be able to talk to someone who basically told me it's okay to be who I was. It always was okay,
It was always okay.
but for my whole life, I thought I wasn't okay being who I was.
Well, and I think, it sounds like that's what you needed. You needed because your whole life everyone was telling you these things that you should feel and not do and be, and now you had someone that gave you the permission
Yeah.
to just be Heather.
Yeah. And it's like, it's so interesting because like we say when I said the thing about my mom, like my mom was trying so desperately to protect us because
Of
she had seen
course.
what happened to her family members who came out with problems with mental illness. And so she's like protecting us, but in protecting us, I then just hid myself. And so that's the unpacking that happens. And I think that happened, thankfully, some people learn much earlier and there's the own issues that come with that. I'm not saying it's a perfect world, but being able to understand the things that was going on in my life at that moment made me feel like, okay, I kind of understand something. I have a path I can take. I have things I can work on and do. Like I can, you, you can't fix it. It's like, it just is, you just are, right? But at least I
You don't
know
need to fix it.
exactly. But there's always idea. Because I was always like my whole life, how do I fix this? How do I fix this? How do I feel better? How do I fix this? And really it's like, no, how do I exist and how do I create better environments for me to be in? I don't have to change me.
To be your best self.
Exactly.
Yeah. Did when your therapist agreed or said yes, was did that even though you were leading yourself up to that and you were, feeling that this was probably the way, were those words impactful for you? Did it give you any kind of sense of relief of any sort?
I think it's interesting. I think because I came in thinking I'm going to have to fight to get the
To
answer
get
that
an agreement.
to get agreement, because I knew in my heart, and I had known for years, and I just didn't want to admit it. But now I really like looked into it. I'm like, I 100% this is me. 100% this explains everything that everyone dismissed. This is it. These things that people were calling failings in myself that felt like moral failings, that felt like I was told someone broke up with me once and said, "You're too intense, you're too much." I'm like, all those things were all related to how my brain works. But I had someone who said, "You sound like all of the things you're saying makes it sound like you have ADHD. We are going to do some tests, but that's what I feel like. But I will not give a definitive answer until we do these tests. And you said, go away and like answer some of these questions that I want you to answer." And so the official diagnosis that I got was CPTSD and ADHD. C is what I have, or what I carry with me, I'll say. And so they interact with each other in very specific ways, but mostly like I was doing the tests and I had my husband answer the quiz as well. You do a rating scale. He answered exactly the same as I did. Even in one case, he's like, "I'm sorry, it's a 6." And I'm like, "I know it's a 6." It's like totally fine because it's like a scale out of 6. And he's like, "It's a 6." I said, "Yes, it's totally a 6." ADHD-C is a combination. So it means I have hyperactivity, impulsivity, and inattentiveness. So I have all the flavors you can get with ADHD all packed in one person. So that's fine. I
And
think
that's okay.
that's okay. I think the thing that presents the most will be the hyperactivity and the impulsivity is what people will notice the most. The medication, I take medication now, which has also been amazing. Because of my anxiety in my family, I was very scared to take a stimulant, so I take a non-stimulant medication, and it helps a lot. And it's not doesn't erase things. What it does is it's like it takes the world down a notch, and it allows me to think for a second more. So like the medication I take actually really is helpful for impulsivity specifically, which is great because that's the interrupting but I have a thought in my head and I have to tell you before it goes. It's the like just making impulsive choices. A lot of it can, range, but it's that thing of like, I'll just do that, which is probably also contributes to why I moved to many cities and many countries and did many, like, there's that thing of like, I'm just going to go and change. If this isn't working, I'm going to go, which actually has been amazing, has led me down an amazing road.
I can relate to the idea of as much as we didn't need someone to tell us something because we knew deep down, we still needed it. We needed like that outside validation that what we were thinking was okay. And I mean, for you, it makes sense because so much of your outside reaction from people were against kind of like what you felt was okay or what you were trying to do or how you were trying to accommodate for the things that you were experiencing. I said that I could before we started recording that your story of getting this answer or confirmation from a therapist can be so relatable even if someone is not facing what you faced. In my own experience, listeners know my mom died when I was 8, and that's the reason the life shift exists. But in that moment, my life had changed, and for decades after that, I didn't know how to grieve. No one had the tools. So,
That's
in
right.
like similar to your case, I go to someone just wants to fix it, right? They just want to, oh, just be happy. Life will be fine. And I'm like, well, I haven't unpacked all this stuff. And by the time I got in my 30s and I found the right therapist, which I'm sure you can agree with, you had some pretty dismissive, if we can call them that,
Hmm.
therapists. And I had one that was just like, after spilling my entire life to her, she was like, you realize that every decision that you've made up until this point was made with your 8-year-old mind of fear and protection, and so you're telling your story and you get this confirmation even though you were leading up to it. I can imagine how much after that moment you went back and you're like, "Oh, when I did this, this totally makes sense." Like all
Yes.
these things started to unravel. Did you have that experience like that?
That
Was it a
is
good
yeah.
experience?
Oh, well, talking about grieving, it was grieving. So that was, to me, the biggest shift. So getting the diagnosis was like, "Yes, okay, I have an answer." It was when I went through conversations with my therapist, and I remember the one that really put things into focus was around food. Because as I kind of alluded earlier, the story of me having people restrict food for me, and I started going to Weight Watchers when I was like 11 years old.
I
I
did Slim Fast at 12, so I get it.
Yeah, because I wanted to, again, fit in, be accepted, be the model that of everyone. Like, I have to be the best, the smartest. I have to look good. I have to do this, whatever. Like at the time, putting restrictions on what you could be. I realized in a session we're talking, and she's like, "Food is also used as stimulation," and I was like, "Oh my god." Like, that little kid was just trying to help her brain. Like, that's it.
And people were taking that from you.
And, like, judging me for it. No, there's better ways. There's other ways. Not better, other ways. Snacking can be fine too, but it's also access to food. We were very poor. We didn't have a lot of stuff. So it becomes what's cheap. And so I wasn't always like, my mom fed us very well. She did the best she could, and she tried to make sure that we had as normal, in quotes, the life as possible. But I would I remember her saying, "I'd get nice snacks and I couldn't keep them in the house." I'm like, "Well, maybe we're just hungry." But really it was like, well, I was using it as a stimulation, way to stimulate myself. And then when I went to Weight Watchers, I started to like do more exercise and things like that. And actually exercise is amazing for the brain and for dopamine. And so things like that I know are so helpful. But at the time I was struggling and just trying to find whatever I could to help myself. And I didn't understand. And to me, that was the shift of going back through my life and understanding, like, the guy who broke up with me because I was too intense, or the moments that I had like difficulty at a job, or being a kid. And I remember like I'd bite my nails, again, stimulation. And when I would like, and just my whole life, if you don't bite your nails, you'll get a fancy ring. If you don't bite your nails, blah, 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 like all this stuff. And I would try so hard, and then I would do it because I'd focus and I'd get it done. And as soon as like I got praise, I would just start doing it again because I needed that for stimulation at that time.
Did that unpacking, did you find yourself giving yourself grace in those moments after that little bit of grief, or were you upset, or what was your emotion to that after you kind of started to process these little pieces in your life? Because I can see that it still affects you thinking about
Of
it,
course.
but I'm wondering if you're in a space in which that was,
Mm,
that was out of your control. That was just you trying to find something, and there's no blame to be had there.
yeah. I still, I think that the first thing was there was a lot of grief because so much of my life and so many parts of me that I thought were bad were related to this very specific disorder, this very specific way that my brain was formed. And it's not something that, as much as you're like, "Oh, I can embrace this. I know who I am now." It was more like I had to grieve. I was mad. I was really angry.
Who are you mad at, or what was it? The circumstance? Where is it? People? Was it yourself?
I'd spent so many years being mad at myself, so I think it was
That's
always
the shame that people introduced to you early on.
so I was just kind of, I think it was like a general anger. Like no one did anything wrong. It's just that they didn't pay attention. And it happened. That's why it happens a lot with women, because or certain people, not just women, but often with women, because that idea of like, well, you're just the idea of like and I'm also from the Midwest. So like the Midwest of Canada, we don't talk about anything. So like this is also part of it culturally.
Welcome to my
Yeah,
podcast.
I know. It's like keep it in, keep to yourself. That idea of presenting like that everything is perfect, that you are fine. I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. And I think I'm just mad that it was allowed to go on for so long and that no one could figure it out. And I think that's why we have to be our best. We are our best advocates. But I'm not like I'm not educated in a way that I'm going to be like I understand how. I'm not a psychologist. Like how long did it take me to figure this out? And I'm like, well, why didn't anyone else? And I think there's part of it in the hiding is that you don't again know what is different, that you're experiencing something different than other people. That thing of like, I didn't know my childhood was different than other people's because I just thought everyone had the same childhood. So how would I even tell people like, well, time disappears from me, or I can hyper focus for 10 hours and I don't have any idea about like I don't understand hunger cues. I don't understand like there's all these things. Why would I ever tell a therapist that? Like why would I tell a therapist all these things that actually were related to my ADHD? Because I thought that's just my life, or I'm just a bad person because I can't pay attention enough to my friends when they're talking, or if I'm at a party, I listen to 3 conversations at once because I'm a jerk. I literally thought I'm a jerk because I can't focus on someone.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, not to diminish any of those feelings that you have, but I wonder if 80s, 90s, even 2000s, if there were enough people equipped to listen
Yeah.
properly, right? I often think of my own experience going through the loss of a parent in the late 80s, early 90s. I don't know that people were, they just thought kids would bounce back easily, right?
Yes.
Like kids don't have all these wide emotions.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm living my life out of fear that someone else is going to abandon me because in my tiny little brain, my mom abandoned me. It wasn't her fault, but
Yeah.
at the same time, but I also look back and I'm like, I don't know if anyone would have been able to help me. Is there something, do you know, now that you know that you're a deep dive researcher, do you know that if people were like if
Yes.
ADHD was something that was widely researched and stuff in the time period when you were a child and going through all of this?
I'd say that it's not. Yes, I agree with you. I think that it just wasn't something that would have been caught. It would have been very difficult to catch because I did really well. They call it twice exceptional. So ADHD and I was extremely intelligent. So I would get straight A's like in high school.
She's fine.
I'm fine.
Yeah, she's fine. She's
I,
doing great.
I graduated with an IB diploma with honors with distinction.
That's all that people cared about in those time periods, by the
No
way.
one would have thought that I volunteered and I was in like a million bands. I was doing a million things. I had 2 jobs. Like no one thought this person
You
is
had all the
struggling.
gold stars.
I had all the gold stars.
And I think that society really just was looking at that. That was the determination of who was okay and who was not, is like, were you successful? And like, here you are, successful, doing all the things, but internally you're like, I can't I can't function in this world.
When I went to college with the first year and I decided, in my infinite wisdom, I'll take an 8 a.m. sociology class. Like who should ever do that? Not no. And then
Not in
have
college.
and then have a break until 2 p.m. when I had a drama class. I'm like, so I never went to 8 a.m. sociology, even though I was immensely interested in it. I watched all the procedural television that my heart desired instead, which actually is going to helps me with my job now. But at the time, I had to drop out of a class in college because I couldn't read the material fast enough because how I functioned before and staying up all night or doing the material the day before did not serve me anymore. I didn't have a regular schedule anymore, which people with ADHD benefit immensely from having a regular schedule. It's also the hardest thing for us to keep. But when you're forced to do it by having a job or by being in a school that's structured, college isn't structured like that. It's like have classes when you want, do what you want. And to go from structure to no structure was very difficult. But I never went to someone and said, "Hey, I'm having lots of challenges." Instead, I hid it. I dropped out of the class before it would be on my records. So no one could see that I was failing a class. This person who left high school with honors with distinction was in the next year failing. But that was an indicator. But instead it was shame. And so,
Well, and you were taught to cover it
yes.
your whole life.
Yes,
And that
exactly.
was the way that you succeed. I can understand that.
Yeah. I could see a lot of
I
kids
think
doing that.
I think a lot of people like, well, if I drop out, then I didn't fail.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
And like,
exactly.
it's nobody will know.
Yeah.
I just didn't have time for it. I just, and we come up with these excuses so that whatever we were conditioned to think was successful or living the best life, that's what we did. I hope I didn't offend you by saying that I think the time period has a lot to do with your experience, my experience, and just the capabilities. I'm
Yes.
so hopeful. We started out this conversation about how, like media is changing,
Yes.
and more perspectives are being shared. I'm hopeful that a Heather going through what you went through now, like a young Heather going through it now, I'm hopeful that they would have a different experience because more people they're talking more.
Yes.
There's people like you're sharing your story, and all the hard parts led you to this point. And who knows, someone could hear this and go, oh, maybe that's me, and get the help that might be available now that wasn't quite available to you at the time.
The one thing I really wish would change in general is that most of the studies we have for a lot of things are based on a very specific subset of people, specifically white males. That doesn't
Sorry.
work. No, it's not your fault. You didn't do it, but like,
I take the blame. I'll take the shame.
don't take the blame or shame. But most of the studies, let's say, like I just had a conversation with a wonderful woman yesterday for our podcast, Brains, for a woman about she's autistic and said Asperger's, who we don't really refer to any part of autism as being related to Asperger's because he was not let's say he wasn't a great person. He didn't hang around with great people we'll say in a very certain time period in Germany. Anyway, so we don't, but he only did his study on essentially, I think, a prep school with white males to talk about autism. So there's a very different presentation. There's also societal expectations of different groups of people. It's also a very Western approach. Different cultures have different ways of being. So this whole idea of like autism and not making eye contact, in some cultures, you don't make eye contact. So that's not an indicator. And so we just need to have that because I think even now today, like my sister went to go, one of my sisters went to go get diagnosed with ADHD and they dismissed her and said that if you had it, you would have been diagnosed by now. But it's not true because again, masking access to healthcare, think about we were in a lower socioeconomic background. So living and growing up in poverty, you don't necessarily go to the doctor that much. You go to the doctor when you're sick. You don't go for like regular care
And really sick.
Yeah, really sick. And that's not a hit on anyone. It's just, that's the reality. Right. And you're definitely not, if we're being conditioned to be like, we're going to just be the norm, you're not going to necessarily get that help. And my sister's different from me. She would have a different flavor of ADHD. She's the most introverted person that I know, but definitely still falls within the spectrum of like inattentiveness. So I think as more research can be done, what I am hopeful for is that we start to look at different sets of people so that our research can be more complete and that we are going to be able to help people and educate the people that they see in a way that helps them be seen. Will a doctor in northern Saskatchewan, where I grew up, know about ADHD in the way that someone else might know? Maybe not, because maybe they haven't seen that presentation at all. So there is going to be differences. And what I'm hopeful for too is the more access to information there is online, the more that people are sharing their stories, the more that people will be able to hopefully find themselves and feel less alone.
What has changed in your life since you got that confirmation and agreement? Like what's changed in the way that you run your life and the way that you do things?
So, huh, as a classic overachiever, I would often push my brain to the brink. And now I understand that it needs space and it's okay to take space and time. That my therapist continues to say, I want you to have space in your day that's not related to anything to do with work. Because of my hyperactivity, it likes to always be doing something, but it's okay to take rest and to be mindful of what your body needs. This is I have something called a time timer. For those who can see, it basically is a visualization of time, and so it helps when you have something. I have basically time blindness. I can't understand the passing of time, and so it helps you kind of understand time, and it helps you take breaks. And so just trying to be mindful that yes, I can push myself, but is that optimal? And again, creating better environments and continuing to learn. I think it's overwhelming when you first get a diagnosis, but as you continue to move through the world, to continue to like enlighten and educate yourself, because you are the best advocate, you are the only person that can set your life as you want it. I think also just becoming more open about what ADHD is and that it is a disability. It affects every aspect of my life. And even though it may not seem debilitating, I'm doing like a lot of heavy lifting that you don't get to see. And it took me a while to realize that. And I remember asking my therapist, am I allowed to say that I'm disabled? And she said, yes, you've been part of the party your whole life. You just didn't realize it. So I was like, oh, okay. And I still sometimes I'm like, I don't know when to disclose. I worry about what people will think, but trying to, as one gentleman I was part of, is something called Respectability. It's a lab for entertainment professionals with disabilities. And one thing that he said to this one gentleman said in our group, he's like, I always say right away, I'm a disabled creator, because then I know exactly who I want to work with. And I was like, oh yeah. So it's just that balance of, and you don't have to disclose, you don't, unless you want to, and you don't have to give all the information. But I think the biggest thing that has changed that am continuing to give myself that grace is I asked my husband after I was diagnosed, I said, what has changed? Like, what have you seen that's changed? And he's like, well, you've known that you've had this for a long time. Like, I've known, like, so we've been together for a while. He's like, you've known for a long time. He's like, but what the difference is that you hate yourself less.
Yeah. I was going to ask if you feel do you feel more comfortable being you in your skin, or are you getting there?
I'm getting there. I don't think it's like something that can change overnight for sure. I'm more open about, I think trying to be more open about my needs has been like the biggest challenge that I'm trying to like advocate for myself, like, and then figure out, well, what is it that I actually need? What is it that I've just made do with? And by having people in your life who understand, like even small things I've said, like my sister, I do the podcast with Sarah. We were doing a photo shoot and she said, oh, is the music okay? Or do you want me to change it? Or do you want me to turn it off? Like, is it distracting for you? And I remember like, no one had ever asked me that. And so by being open about it, it allows other people to also help create good environments for me to be in. Or like my other sister took me shopping. We went to IKEA. I love IKEA, but only to a certain extent. I don't even have to buy anything.
I think that's true of anyone at this point.
Yeah, it's pretty
It's a lot.
overwhelming, but she can see that I start getting grumpy. She's like, oh, you're getting overwhelmed. Do you want to go now? And I was like, oh, yeah, actually 100% I do. Thanks. Like I was just putting up with it. She's like, no, we can go now. Let's go get a tea. And we like just left. And it's nice to have that.
Yeah, it's important.
Yes.
I know this is your choice to share your story and your choice to disclose anything. But the more people that can feel comfortable saying, like, this is me, this is who I am, and these are all the interesting facets of me, these are the things that have brought me to this point in my life. I think the less people growing up now will have that shame that you internalized for so long, that you held on to and probably are still trying to shed some of that, because it'll probably be a lifetime thing. But
Yes.
I hope that you get to this point where, you know, you can see it as you talk about the different phases of your life. You can see how you treat yourself, and just in this, I don't know you beyond this conversation, and you can see that. And I think your story is so important for so many people, because, like, this is us. Like, we have all
Yes.
everyone has things, right? And we might have a disease that people find is more acceptable,
Right.
but
Yes.
at the same time, it's just what's in our body. It's like, like, this is just me. And I hope that you get to a place where you're just so comfortable, just, this is it. And it sounds like you're doing that, and what you do with your work, and creating stories that tell examples of what you feel and what you see and what you think in the world, that may be different on how I do. And by me seeing something or reading something, I get a new perspective. I get something that enhances my life, because I know someone that is different than me and has a different experience than me. And that's cool. Like, that's what we need to celebrate.
Yes, and we all bring something to the table that's different. We have someone said to me, a writer had said, Ben Watkins, he said, we all have so many languages that we can speak. And the languages are like the background I lived, my disability, living in middle America, like all those things are languages. And I think we are made up of so much intersectionality, and it changes our approach. And yes, some people go, oh, your X is a superpower. And for me, I never think of it as such. It's just like, no, we all have superpowers, I guess, if you want to say that. But we all just bring something different to the table. And if we can have more people who are different at the table, the more we can learn from each other. And I think the more we can create, I think something that will be universally good for all.
And I think a lot of that is just people need to be a little bit more open, because I bet you at the tables, there were always a lot of different experiences, but people were performing to whatever we thought we were supposed to, whatever box we were filling at that moment. And so the more people like you share stories like this around each other, I always say that I want this show to feel like you're eavesdropping on people at a coffee shop, like having just like a real conversation. Like, the more that we can stop pretending that we're something else, I think the better off, like you say, universally, we will be. I like to kind of end these conversations with a question. And I'm wondering if you, Heather, now knowing what you know about your life and how you've lived it, is there anything that you could, or anything you would want to say to the little version of Heather that, may be reaching for a snack or something for that stimulus, or, like something where that shame has been introduced to you? Is there anything that you could say to her or do with her?
I think it's like it's okay to be who you are. There's no shame in existing exactly how you are.
Honestly, I think if a lot of us as kids that have been introduced to this shame were just given permission
Yeah.
to be,
Yeah.
I think things would be a little different, And so I so appreciate you coming on this and sharing this deeply personal experience. I know we went back and forth on some of the different moments in your life, but honestly, there are going to be so many people that can relate to this feeling of, once you understand, or once you have this outward confirmation of something that you've been thinking about your whole life, what you can do with it and what you can move forward with, and hopefully release that shame. So thank you for just taking the time to talk to me today.
No, you're welcome. And I'd say I just encourage everyone to be curious. And if you think that there is something that's different, or that there's something that feels like it's holding you back in some capacity, just lean into it and you'll find your way through.
I agree. I couldn't have said it better. I would love for people to connect with you. So what's the best way to be a part of your world?
So you can find me in a my personal work fashion, I guess I'll call it. I'm on all the socials as Heather A. Taylor. I also do a podcast with my sister called Brains. It's about the different facets of our brains and how film and television portray them. We bring people in with lived experiences to talk about their experience and how they would love to see film and television change to be more representative about what they're facing. So please go and check it out. We'd love anyone to please follow us, subscribe, all those lovely things, but also and let us know what you want to hear about, because we just continually want to talk about the things that we all are facing in some capacity and make the world a little bit better with it, I hope.
I think you're doing that. And we'll share the links to all of that in the show notes so people can connect with you. I highly encourage that. And, thanks again for being a part of this. Like Heather said, if you enjoy The Life Shift or you enjoy Brains, please take a second, give us a little rating, give us a little review, be nice about it, helpful, those kind of things. But thank you for taking a listen to the Life Shift podcast. And we'll be back next week with a brand new episode. For more information, please visit www.thelifeshiftpodcast.com.